What's up guys and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Hey, how you doing? If you're into the history of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, maybe you're just into the mythology, and maybe you're just here to see Odysseus and Penelope reunited. I'm so excited about it! Well, then this is not only the video for you, this is also the channel for you. You guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you know every single time I post in the future. But on topic of today's video, and as you can see from the title, we're going to be going into book 23 of Homer's Odyssey. So if I could summarize book 23 into a one sentence, it would be that Penelope tricks Odysseus and has him throw a hissy fit. Yep, he does obviously throw a hissy fit because his little ego gets wounded at one point because Penelope knows exactly what to do in order to push his buttons. And so with that being said, why don't we just roll into the episode? So where I left you at the end of the last book was that Eurycleia was running up the stairs to go and tell Penelope that her husband is now home after Odysseus, was like fumigating the whole house with like some, wood burning thing or whatever. So Eurycleia runs up there and Penelope is asleep because remember that Athena put Penelope to sleep. She always does that because Penelope cries a lot in bed. And so Eurycleia walks over to the bed, she leans over Penelope and she's like, "Hello, Lady Penelope, your husband is home and all of the suitors are dead. Wonderful news to wake up to." And Penelope does wake up to the sound of this, but she literally thinks that Eurycleia's gone mad. Like, she even says to Eurycleia that the gods can do that to people, that she's like, yeah, you're of sound mind and all of this, but the gods can make anybody crazy, and clearly they've done something to you. She asks Eurycleia why she mocks her, because Eurycleia of all people knows that she hasn't been happy since Odysseus left for Destroy. Remember that she doesn't like to call Troy, she calls it Destroy. And finishes by saying, "The only reason why I haven't yelled at you is because of your age, and because you are much older than me, and because you're much wiser than me. That is the only reason why you haven't felt my wrath." Because Penelope apparently has that. Eurycleia then replies and tells her, "Of course, I am not disrespecting you, and I am not trying to make a mockery of you. However, the guy who was a beggar downstairs this whole time in the palace, that was Odysseus, and Telemachus knew, but Telemachus was playing even into this plan. All because they had to kill the suitors, and they had to do so correctly." Penelope does believe this though, and she has this moment where her heart just like jumps in her chest and she's like, oh my god, how has this happened? How could he have killed all of the suitors if it was one man against a whole army? Like, what went on? If this is true, this whole thing, like, she's really trying to sort of find the clarification that this is actually a true story. And Eurycleia, unfortunately, she replies going, "I have no clue, I wasn't there. I was behind a door. I was just waiting until Telemachus came up, and then he knocked on the door, and then I came out, and then Odysseus was standing there drenched in blood and around all these dead bodies, and I was like, what?" And then he was like, "Yeah, can you do this for me, Eurycleia?" And I was like, "Sure." And that is the wonderful recap that we get from Eurycleia, and she basically just finishes it off by saying, "Your husband is literally downstairs warming his hands on the fire. His fire in his home with his son. Go, please, Penelope." Now, Penelope then tells Eurycleia not to be so excited and not to sing too many praises of this person who's downstairs, because she is still really struggling to believe that it's actually Odysseus and he's actually done this, because she says that what Eurycleia just described is more so like what a god would do and how a god would save somebody and all of this. So she says that there's no way that the story could have happened the way that you're telling me it happened. So it might be Odysseus, it might very well be him, but it definitely didn't happen that way if it was my mortal husband doing all of this. Which Eurycleia has now had it up to her eyeballs, and she just looks at Penelope and she goes, "You are chatting. You're annoying me. Go downstairs and see your husband." She does tell Penelope that she herself has had proof that it is the real Odysseus, because when she was washing his feet, she saw the scar. So she relays this to Penelope and she says, "If I happen to be lying, if this happens to not be the real Odysseus, then you can stab me with 1,000 knives of pain." Very dramatic, but that's verbatim what Eurycleia says in the Greek. And so with that, the two of them then go downstairs to the hall. When Penelope does get down to the hall though, she has this moment where she's sort of fighting with herself, because she doesn't know if she should, jump into her husband's arms, if she should go and, hug him, kiss him or whatever, or to hold back a little bit. And when she gets into the hall, she then decides that she's going to hold back and she will be testing this so-called Odysseus, which obviously we know it is the real Odysseus. So she goes in and she takes a seat quite far away from him actually, whilst he's sitting by the fire. He's sitting up against a column and he's warming his hands. Odysseus is sat there and he is poised because he is ready for his wife to quiz him on exactly who he is, whilst Penelope actually doesn't say anything to begin with, that she just kind of stares at him because she has these moments of seeing her husband in this person. But also bear in mind, it's been 20 years. So she says that sometimes, she doesn't even say it, she is thinking, and Homer says that sometimes this man becomes a complete stranger in front of her. So she doesn't know if she's going to believe him to be the Odysseus that left for Troy, or if it's just someone who's come in and is going to pretend to be her husband. Before either of them can say anything, Telemachus jumps in and he immediately, not attacks Penelope, but he does come for her. He's all like, "You have such a hard heart. This man has spent 20 years coming home for you, and you sit here and just stare at him? Do you not want to do anything else to my father? Like, come on, woman! But Penelope actually remains completely calm, and she just turns to Telemachus and she says, if this truly is your father, if this truly is Odysseus, then have no doubt in your mind that we will come together, because we have a secret sign between us that only the two of us will know, and we'll be able to come back together. Now Odysseus is listening to this, and he literally is just sitting there and he just starts smiling like a dummy, right? Because he's just like, that's my woman right there. And he turns to Telemachus in this moment and he says that actually Telemachus should leave them so that Penelope can quiz him and do whatever in the way that, you know, she needs to do. But also he says that probably the reason why she doesn't recognize him is because he's still covered in rags and blood. So he's like, maybe we should all go take a bath and I should come back looking nice and like royal and kingly the way that I should be dressed, and maybe it will help Penelope a little bit. And so he ends up going to have like a bath and all of this, and we do get a very long description of like the oil that's rubbed on him, and the maid even that does, you know, like rebel the oil and like help him bathe and all of this. And when he's putting on all of his, you know, gear, his like kingly gear and all of this, we do have Athena come down and make him look more attractive. So, you know, like he's now broader, he's taller, he's like glowing, you know, all of this sort of stuff that we've seen Athena do for him, she does for him again. And then he goes back into the hall feeling like he's hot. Now, when Odysseus goes back downstairs into the hall, Penelope hasn't budged, okay? She doesn't believe him anymore, even though he's in all this like kingly garb and all of this, even though he looks hella great, she still doesn't really trust him all that much. And so she's still quite standoffish. Now, Odysseus can't take this, right? He has a little bit of a hissy fit here, a minor hissy fit compared to the hissy fit we're about to see, but a hissy fit nonetheless, where he basically says to her, you know what? Fine, you have a heart of iron. If you want to be like this, no problem. I will sleep separately from you tonight. I'll give you your space, even though you've had 20 years of it. Fine, whatever. And he complains about how he has been gone for 20 years and only come back just for her. Like the thought of Penelope is what really brought him home all those years and through all that struggle. And so he's finally home and he's just like, F it, have one more night being by yourself. If you want to be like this, no problem. So he asks her to ask one of the maids to make up a bed for him in a separate room so that he can sleep, whether it be in the hall or whatever it is. Like, he doesn't really care, but he says that he's going to sleep separately. And Penelope now sees her time to shine. And this is where we get the test. Penelope turns to Eurycleia and calls her over and tells her to move the bridal bed from her room out so that Odysseus can sleep on it if he so wants to, right? She's just like, move this bed, bring it downstairs, whatever. That way he can sleep on that bed and he'll be comfortable, put a lot of fleeces on it, you know, all of that sort of garb and all that sort of stuff, whatever. She instructs Eurycleia to do this. Now, this might sound really nice to you, that she's like, oh, she's gonna have her whole bed moved from her room for Odysseus and all of this. How is this a test? Well, you guys, Odysseus pops the off when he hears this. Like, he goes ape at this. Like, he's so mad, and he doesn't even have a moment to sort of like kind of get himself mad. Like, he starts off at 100, okay? We don't start off at 0, go to 100. He is pissed as hell. So he immediately starts taking it out on Penelope, and he's like, how the is that bed supposed to be moved? Did you actually cut that bed out from where it is? Are you serious? You know I built that bed. Could you have possibly done that? Or did a god do that? I'm still not gonna be happy if it's a god, but I'll be a little bit less angry if it's a god. How could you do this to me after 20 years? And we do get a full explanation right now about why this exactly is a test and why it's the perfect test. And that's because the bridal bed that Penelope is speaking of and the one that Odysseus is flipping out over is the bed that Odysseus had actually made for both of them. So the story is that when they were building the palace, and we do get this in the chapter, when they were building the palace, there was this like big tree in the middle of it, basically, in the middle of this plot of land. And they decided to incorporate the tree into the house. So the bed is made from the wood from the tree, right? So it's attached to this tree. And Odysseus made it himself. You know, he sanded it down. It's inlaid with like ivory and it's absolutely beautiful apparently. And so in order to get this bed to be moved, somebody would have to literally cut it from the tree, right? So that's why Odysseus is flipping right now. And it's the perfect test because only Odysseus would know that. Like, there's nobody else who's been in the bridal chamber apart from Penelope, Odysseus, and one other maid, which Penelope brought from her home and brought it to Ithaca. And she is the only other person who has ever set eyes on this bed and knows that it has to be physically cut from the tree, which is why Eurycleia didn't say shit in that moment. So as Odysseus is yelling his head off, right, because he has every right to be angry at this. Like, I have to say, I'm team Odysseus if this was true. Obviously it's not true, but if it was, totally on his side. But this reaction is all that Penelope needed, right? She just immediately starts crying her eyes out because she knows that she's now standing in front of her husband and not somebody who's pretending to be her husband just looks kind of like her husband. Like, this is 150%, no doubt in her mind, this is Odysseus. And oh my God, you guys, she just literally like runs over to him. She like wraps her arms around him. She kisses him, she hugs him, like he's kissing her and she's crying. Both of them are crying. Oh my God, I want to cry every single time I read this. It is the cutest thing. And she's like begging him not to be mad with her because she's just like, you know, this was a test, like don't worry, like we haven't moved the bed, like please, you're the most understanding man in the world, like please know that I had to do this in order to make sure that you truly were who you say that you were. And Odysseus initially doesn't even reply, right? He's too busy crying. He can't even get a word out from like his choking from his sobs. And like, honestly, me too. The pair would have literally just stayed hugging each other and crying had not Athena, you know, sort of like reminded Odysseus in this moment, like you have something else to tell your wife, by the way, you should probably do that. So Odysseus pulls back and he does tell Penelope that he has some more things to do because if you guys remember from book 11, when Odysseus went down to the underworld, he got a whole prophecy from Tiresias. So he says to Penelope, like, I have a couple of things to do because Tiresias told me to do a couple of things before I die and all of this. So, you know, I have to get to those things. But for the moment, we should just like go to bed and we should just like enjoy ourselves and enjoy our company and all of this. Penelope does her best with trying to be like super encouraging. And she's just like, okay, you want to go to bed? Like, totally support that. You know, you've been gone for so long and everything. But if you have this prophecy, I'm sure that I'm going to hear about it or have to live through it, so I would kind of like to know about it. So Odysseus then relays the prophecy that we got from Tiresias. So it's literally like a copy and pasted moment, honestly, in the text. So if you want to hear the whole thing, you should go watch my video on book 11 because I do say the whole thing out there, I'm pretty sure, or I told you guys to go and read the book. Either way, it's somewhere, right? And Tiresias tells us this whole long thing of what Odysseus should do. So he relays that to Penelope and he just says, you know, I have to do all of this and then I will die at an old age after doing all of these steps that Tiresias says. So we know that he has this very long life and he's going to die as an old man and all of this, like in the comfort of his own home with his family and all of this. Now Penelope, again, she's pretty happy to hear that he's going to have a nice long life because she's like, thank I don't have to deal with him disappearing for another 20 years. Amazing. And the two of them then go up to their bedrooms. Now there is a lot of little like, you know, we hear of this character going to bed and this character going to bed. We hear of Telemachus and the cowherd and the swineherd, by the way. They're all still there and they all go to bed too. So we, you know, hear about all of that stuff and how one of the maids had even like lit the way for Penelope and Odysseus to walk through the halls because Eurycleia had gone to bed way before them because she's an old lady, so why not? Penelope and Odysseus get back to their room. The servant obviously leaves, the maid obviously leaves them, and we get this very nice scene of them like sharing their stories of what the has happened over the last 20 years, because bear in mind there is no like DMing in that time, there's no sending letters. That was a time of like messengers and he's been gone for 20 years. They haven't had that access either. So literally neither of them know what the has been going on in their lives. And so now is the time they like sit up all night like kids, right? Having like a slumber party and they're like, now you go, tell me what happened with this. Oh my God, who is that? Basically what happens. And then eventually they do fall asleep, but in the morning, Odysseus wakes up and he wakes up before Penelope and he like starts putting all of his clothes on and everything. And then he wakes up Penelope, thank God, because I'm not gonna lie, the first time I read this, I remember distinctly thinking, is he going to leave while she's asleep? What the hell? But he doesn't, don't worry. He wakes up Penelope and explains to her that even though he wants to stay in bed like all day with her and he just wants to hang out with her, that he has to go and see his father Laertes because Laertes still has no idea that he's home. But he does instruct Penelope in this moment to stay in the palace and to not take questions or to take any visitors because remember, all the suitors are dead, right? And a lot of them, they're Ithacans, so the people of the island not gonna be too happy about this. Instead, he tells Penelope to have a bard go and stand outside to sing, to go outside and sing, so that way everybody thinks that she has chosen somebody to marry. Because they will hear the bard's song and all of this. And it's a very smart thing to do, basically. And so Penelope's like, yeah, cool, no problem, but she's still like half asleep in bed. And then Odysseus leaves to go to see his father. Now he leaves the palace with the cowherd, with the swineherd Eumaeus, and with his son Telemachus, but Athena does shroud them all in a mist so that nobody can see them, even though it is now, you know, morning time. And so theoretically, everyone should be able to see them. But because obviously nobody can know that Odysseus is home yet because he killed all of their children, Athena's like, I'm gonna do you a solid right now. And so book 23 ends with Odysseus walking off to visit his father. And that is the end of the book. We only have one chapter left. What the f? It's wild to me. So thank you guys so much for being along this journey. If you guys have enjoyed it, then please hit that like button because I absolutely love that button being here. I won't lie to you guys. It really like does things for my ego, mostly for my academic ego. These videos do nothing for my street cred. But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in and we'll be seeing you next time for the last episode of this series, which is still mind-boggling. So thank you guys so much and we'll be seeing you then.